For most of human history, the sky has been a place of meaning. It was where gods lived, where signs appeared, where the unknown watched from above. Ancient civilizations didn't just look at the sky for weather or stars. They studied it, mapped it, built entire belief systems around what they thought existed above them. And scattered across ancient texts, fragmented inscriptions, and early historical accounts, there are repeated references to something unusual. Not stars, not comets, not gods descending in human form, but structures, massive forms suspended in the sky, silent, immobile, sometimes described as glowing, sometimes as dark shapes blotting out the sun. They were called many things: sky thrones, heavenly palaces, floating temples. Today, they're almost never mentioned. This is the story of the sky temples, and the unsettling question of whether ancient civilizations were describing myth or something they genuinely saw. Most ancient myths share a common trait. They are symbolic. Dragons represent chaos, floods represent rebirth, gods represent forces of nature. But sky temple accounts are different. They are described with structure, platforms, columns, symmetry, entrances. Ancient Mesopotamian texts speak of houses of the gods that did not rest on mountains, but hovered above cities, visible for days at a time. In early Chinese chronicles, there are references to celestial halls that appeared during specific rains, floating silently, unmoving, before vanishing without explanation. Mesoamerican codices describe that sky places where gods descended not on wings, but from above-standing platforms, connected to the heavens by invisible paths. These descriptions don't read like metaphors. They read like observations. What makes this more disturbing is how geographically disconnected these cultures were, yet how similar the descriptions are. Different languages, different gods, different eras, same idea. Something was up there. Myths usually exaggerate. Sky temple accounts do the opposite. They are strangely restrained. Some texts describe how the structures cast shadows that move with the sun. Others mention reflections, like polished stone or metal. A few accounts even specify soundlessness. No wind, no thunder, no noise at all. One recurring detail appears again and again. They did not fall, they did not fly, they remained. That line appears in variations across multiple civilizations, which raises an uncomfortable question. Why would ancient cultures invent floating structures that did nothing and no attacks, no miracles, no grand displays? They simply existed. And then one day they were gone. There is no physical evidence of sky temples, at least none that archaeologists officially acknowledge. But there are anomalies. Ancient cities with architecture oriented not toward stars or solstices, but toward empty sky coordinates. Monuments aligned vertically, not horizontally. Ceremonial platforms with no astronomical function. Massive structures built beneath where ancient texts claim sky temples once appeared. In several locations, cities were abandoned shortly after these supposed sightings stopped. Not destroyed, not conquered, abandoned. Archaeologists label these as cultural collapses. Historians call them coincidence. But the timing is precise, as if something the people relied on simply left. Some ancient texts imply the sky temples were not just buildings. They were occupied, not by gods walking among humans, but by unseen presences that observe from above. One inscription describes them as those who do not descend yet see all. Another mentions rituals performed not to summon gods, but to signal them. Light, smoke, sound, communication, not worship. This interpretation changes everything. If sky temples existed, they may not have been religious at all. They may have been observation platforms. There are two dominant explanations scholars cautiously entertain. The first is symbolic exaggeration. That sky temples represent spiritual concepts made physical through storytelling. But symbolism doesn't require architectural consistency. The second explanation is far more uncomfortable. That ancient people were attempting to describe something technological, using the only language they had, Smooth surfaces became polished stone of the gods. Light became divine glow. Hovering became suspended by the heavens. Technology seen through a mythological lens. Not impossible, just inconvenient. If the sky temples existed, their purpose remains unclear. Some theories suggest surveillance, watching human development from a distance. Others propose communication hubs, connecting distant civilizations through shared observation. A darker theory suggests control, that early civilizations believed their gods watched constantly because something actually did. And when those structures disappeared, belief systems collapsed, authority dissolved, purpose faded, the sky went silent. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect is not that sky temples appeared. It's that they stopped appearing. There are no accounts after a certain point in history, no medieval sightings, no Renaissance text, no modern records, as if whatever was there left or chose not to be seen again. Which leads to one final thought. Today, we look at the sky and see satellites, aircraft, space stations, controlled, documented, explained. But for thousands of years, humans looked up and believed something else was there. Something watching, something waiting, something that never came down. Were sky temples myth? Or were they an early attempt to describe something humanity wasn't ready to understand? The sky is quiet now, but ancient people once believed it wasn't always that way. And maybe the most disturbing possibility is this: what if they weren't wrong? If the sky temples were nothing more than myth, then they are a remarkably consistent one, spanning continents, cultures, thousands of years. But if they were real, then they represent something far more unsettling than ancient gods or forgotten technology. They suggest that at some point in human history, we were not alone in our sky. Whatever these structures were, they didn't stay. They didn't leave instructions, and they didn't leave proof, only questions. And perhaps that's why the idea of the sky temples still lingers. Not because they existed, but because if they did, we were never meant to understand them. Thank you for watching.